In our pursuit to extrapolate any precious morsels further detailing the story and characters of Starfield, surely we left no stone unturned. Or did we? Are there details we missed that could clue us into the setting and circumstances of the prologue to Starfield's main story? Has it been right under our noses this whole time, hidden in plain sight? I believe so. Let's take a look. Our very first small glimpse into the world of Starfield came in the form of a short announcement teaser all the way back in June of 2018. It premiered at E3 that year and basically just showed us our first look at what we now know to be Constellation Star Station LO868. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to learn here, so let's skip forward 3 years to June of 2021, and this is the first official Starfield teaser trailer. In the opening scene of the trailer, we can see a man entering the cargo bay of a spacefaring vessel. Based on the intro to this video, we know that the ship the man is entering is called Frontier because the trailer shows an image of the ship through some sort of video feed while an unknown transmission says,
"Constellation Starship Frontier, we have you on scanners."
As further confirmation, you can see from this flyby shot of the ship that it's actually labeled Frontier on the ship's rear thruster. So we've established that the Frontier is a starship that's owned and operated by members of a group known as Constellation. I believe that the man piloting Frontier in this trailer is meant to be the player character as well. So some of you are rolling your eyes by now, but stick with me. This is a bit exhaustive, but it's leading somewhere very interesting. We can also hear a woman's voice narrating much of the trailer, and this woman seems to be speaking to the player character in this narration, saying that,
"You're part of Constellation now. Part of our family. What you found, it's the key to unlocking everything."
This was our first introduction to the last group of interstellar explorers, known collectively as Constellation. I should have known way back in June of 2022 that the woman from Constellation is actually named Sarah, but apparently I don't pay enough attention to Twitter. Also, take note of the physical appearance of the character who pilots the Frontier and the Constellation patch that adorns the pilot's spacesuit, signifying that he's a member of Constellation, or is at least wearing a former pilot's spacesuit. As far as Constellation's general purpose or motivations, the first mention of this can be found in Bethesda's video from October of 2021 called The Settled Systems. In this video, we learn that Constellation is an organization that is committed to uncovering the mysteries of the Milky Way galaxy. Emil Pagliarulo, design director at Bethesda Studios, describes the player character as one of Constellation's newest members, while showing this same clip of this character from the teaser trailer piloting the Frontier. Again, that's why I think this pilot is meant to represent the player character. So back to the teaser trailer. Sarah from Constellation also says that you're part of Constellation now, as if you had just recently or abruptly become part of their family. Considering what she says right after this, it seems that whatever it is you've found is part of the reason why you've become a member of this group. But is that all there is to it? Constellation is obviously a close-knit circle of like-minded individuals that take their craft so seriously they consider each other family. Keep that in mind. So essentially, an important figure in Constellation welcomes you as a member to her group because of something you found that's very important to them. Now, if we skip forward 1 year to the first gameplay reveal trailer for Starfield in June of 2022, we can easily conclude that the female voice from the teaser is Sarah from the gameplay trailer.
Welcome to Constellation. We have a lot to talk about.
She appears to be either a high-ranking member of Constellation or a very important contributor to the cause in some way. Hang in there, I promise I'm getting to the good stuff. This just requires some exposition for those who aren't quite up to speed. Despite the information that's relatively well known about the lore of Starfield up to this point, there's a question that's rarely asked, and that question is this. What motivation would you, the player character, have to join this group of space explorers known as Constellation just because you found something important to them? Is there some other motivational factor or personal reason for you to join Constellation? I think certainly so, and I believe I know the reason, or at least a motivating factor for why the player character would join. Let's go back to the statement made in the teaser trailer by Sarah. Her saying that what you found is the key to unlocking everything naturally raises the question, what did you find? Well, If you watch this scene from the gameplay trailer, a spaceship that looks just like the Frontier from the teaser trailer flies into a landing dock in an unspecified location. It appears that the pilot of the ship approaches the player character to have a conversation. He says,
"You found something?"
So obviously, one could conclude that this man flew to the player's location or was sent there in order to investigate claims of finding some rare object. But why would this man care about what you found? It doesn't take long to notice the patch on the man's right shoulder, which indicates that he's a member of Constellation. According to the official Starfield Twitter account, this man is actually named Barrett. It's also revealed that Barrett is an adventurer, scientist, explorer, and friendly face that you'll meet in Constellation. I believe this might be a bit of misdirection, but I'll come back to that later. Since we know that Constellation is dedicated to uncovering the mysteries of our galaxy, it makes perfect sense that this ambassador from Constellation would arrive to investigate such an unusual claim. After Barrett asks if the player has found something, a female voice responds, "The new guy found it." Remember that. Barrett then continues talking directly to the player, saying,
"You dug up the artifact, right? That means you saw it. The visions?"
So not only did the player actually dig to retrieve what Barrett is calling an artifact, but you also saw some kind of strange visions, possibly just by touching the artifact. Now, if you go back to a scene a little earlier in the gameplay trailer, you can see what appears to be the player character in a cave or some kind of underground excavation site. The player approaches a gravitational anomaly and reaches out for what looks like a strange relic of some sort. Upon touching it, the player's vision changes or seemingly blacks out. This fits the description of the artifact being dug up and causing the player to have visions. Clearly, the player character digs up the artifact at this particular site. Constellation finds out and sends Barrett to investigate. But why were you here digging in the first place? And who was that female voice that referred to you as the new guy? This is where things start to get interesting. When thinking about that comment, surely there's no way she means the new guy in Constellation, because at this point, you wouldn't have joined Constellation yet, as you only just found this artifact. So what else could be meant by referring to the player as the new guy? Well, obviously, the player could be a new guy on the job, so to speak. Maybe the player was hired to dig here for a company that's trying to excavate this site, or dig for minerals, and just so happened to come across this rare artifact. Bethesda is no stranger to using tragedy, irony, or happenstance to deliver early plot twists that entangle the player in a more grandiose narrative. Their games often thrust the player abruptly into a world that you otherwise wouldn't be a part of if it weren't for cosmic fate or an intervention of some kind. Maybe the player starts as just some nobody, working for a mining company or corporation. Maybe you begin the game digging in caves and extracting minerals for some company or space corporation like Ryujin. Surely finding this artifact will kick off a series of events that will take you on the greatest and most dangerous adventures of your life among the stars. Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. What evidence do we have to support this idea that you start the game, at least in one playthrough, as someone working for a space corp that's digging or mining for minerals or other resources? Well, I'm glad you asked. First, to give us some small indication of how we could be starting the game, listen to this clip of Will Shin talking about the prologue to Starfield.
We've got Ryujin Industries, which represents corporate life. I think it has one of the best starts of any of the factions we've done.
It's a mega corp, and you get hired, right? Like that you would do, right?
We'll play for our job. We'll see if you cut the mustard.
Secondly, you may not have noticed that in the character creation segment of the gameplay trailer, your character has an employee number in the bottom left, as well as what appears to be a company name in the top left. Why do I think it's a company name? Well, it can be seen on your equipment when talking to Barrett about the artifact. It appears to be equipment given to you by a company called Argos Extractors to aid in mining or digging for materials. There's another scene in the trailer that lends heavily to this theory, as it involves the woman's voice from earlier who called you the new guy. I believe that voice came from the woman in this segment here. She's wearing the same suit and equipment as the player character at this time, meaning she's probably a fellow employee, along with these guys too. Oh, and all the mining lasers they're using are the same as the one the player is using in the beginning of the gameplay trailer. Starting out in a mine would be a good place to put an early in-game tutorial segment on how to use the mining laser to harvest resources, as well as some other basic game mechanics. But going back to the female co-worker, she looks at you, helmet in hand, and says,
Most Dusties don't even make it this far.
Most Dusties don't even make it this far, as she puts her helmet on. I'm guessing that Dusties is a slang term for people who do these types of mining jobs, or it's a name given to workers at this particular dig site. Does she mean that most new hires would quit by now, or is this job just especially hazardous, leading to a high mortality rate among workers? Honestly, it's probably the former, but I'd like it to be the latter, just considering it fits the whole high-tech, low-life, dark future space theme that I think of when I hear NASApunk. Regardless, it looks like the bigger picture is starting to come into focus now. For those of you who've made it this far, hang in there, it's all relevant, I promise. Let's sum up what we know so far. You're an employee of a mining corporation or excavation company named Argos Extractors. It's a shit job, but somebody's got to do it, and you're that somebody. Slap that helmet on, grab your mining laser, and get to work, Dusty. You know what? This kind of makes me want to name my character Dusty in Starfield. Anyway, you dig deeper or venture further than the rest, or hell, maybe a wall falls down and you notice something shining. Maybe you hear voices in your head. As you draw closer, you notice a strange gravitational anomaly surrounding an odd piece of stone with inscriptions on it. You can't resist the urge to touch it. As soon as you do, you immediately begin having strange visions of an unknown nature, possibly of other dimensions, faraway civilizations, or intelligent cosmic beings. Or it could simply be a warning of things to come. Either way, you and your co-workers, flabbergasted by the frightening and enigmatic nature of this artifact, contact the proper authorities immediately. Constellation, the foremost experts on all things spacey, show up to get a whiff of that bad baby you're packing.
You found something?
Why is Constellation so interested in finding artifacts? Probably because they've already found some and they're looking for more. Based on what we've heard Sarah say in the gameplay trailer, we know that Constellation sees these artifacts as pieces to a larger puzzle, and that they've been gathering and studying these artifacts prior to you ever finding one. Not only that, but they're considered to be
the key to unlocking everything.
You know, the phrase that Starfieldies have been trying to wrap their brains around for the past 2 years. So here's a piece to a puzzle that could potentially change humanity forever. And you're just the lucky schmuck that stumbled across one. But is it a bad omen right from the start? Let me explain. First, we'll go back to the inside of the Frontier starship from the teaser trailer. Yeah, you knew I was going to come back to this, and this is where the plot starts getting twisty, if I do say so myself. Remember those maps that are on the wall in this ship? Well, for the purpose of this video, you don't really need to know what that's entirely all about to follow me here, but basically Constellation has collected several of these artifact pieces, which they consider to be part of a larger puzzle. Not only have they clearly collected several of them, as shown in what appears to be either a hologram projection or some sort of digital assembly construct, for lack of a better term, but if we look at the map on the wall of the Constellation ship, you can see that the Alpha artifact pattern can be found in that same construct at Constellation headquarters. The other artifacts and their respective patterns are surely represented here as well, but the patterns can't be seen in this shot. So what's the big deal, might you ask? Well, like we spoke about before, these maps charting the artifact patterns and other details are in the same ship as the player character in the teaser trailer. The only problem is, Constellation seems to have already collected these artifacts when you arrive for the first time at their headquarters on Jemison in the gameplay trailer. Since we know that the ship the player character and the ship that Barrett is flying are practically the same, could it be that they are actually the same ship? So, what am I getting at? It should be coming into focus pretty clearly at this point. I do think the player's ship is Barrett's ship. I think Barrett is a longtime member of Constellation, obviously, who has been searching and mapping the artifacts for Constellation for quite some time before you meet him. After you find the next in a series of missing artifacts that Constellation has already acquired, Barrett arrives in the Frontier starship, where you meet him for the first time. So naturally, the next big question would be, okay, so why is the player flying Barrett's ship instead of Barrett flying Barrett's ship? That's a great question, and I'm glad you guys are so inquisitive. Thanks for keeping up.
So, you found something?
The new guy found it.
Well, you could probably guess where this is going, but I think Barrett gets taken out of the picture. That's right, silenced, 86th, murdered. Now who would do a thing like that to such a nice-looking gentleman? No, it wasn't Colonel Mustard, but it most likely was the red-headed stepchildren of the Settled Systems, aka the Crimson Fleet. When everyone else in the galaxy is flying trade routes and sipping space wine, these guys are shooting up Aurora, blasting Kurt Cobain, and committing galactic war crimes, God bless. The gameplay trailer clearly depicts the player finding the artifact and Barrett flying in on the Frontier starship to speak to you in your Argos Extractor's suit. A little later in the trailer, and it shows the Crimson Fleet arriving at the same worksite where everyone is wearing those same work suits. Someone yells, "That's the Crimson Fleet!" And the player character can be seen fighting the Crimson Fleet, possibly for the first time in the game, in his or her Argos Extractor's work suit. I believe this is Barrett here. Think about it though, the player flies into New Atlantis to meet Sarah and Constellation, in a ship that looks just like Barrett's ship, but it's just you and Vasco. When you arrive at Constellation, Barrett is nowhere to be seen. You don't even see him in any other shot in the trailer. If he was alive, why wouldn't he accompany you to Constellation? I mean, I know you both drove here in separate starships, but can't you, spaceship pool together if you're gonna go to the same destination? Anyway, we know the arrival on Jemison takes place after you find the artifact and meet Barrett, which means it also takes place after the battle with the Crimson Fleet. It seems that Barrett likely didn't survive this encounter, but either he entrusted you with carrying out his task, or you felt obligated to reach out to Constellation on his behalf after his untimely death. This would make sense why you have the Frontier starship, the Chronomark watch, and Vasco by your side when arriving at New Atlantis to meet Constellation. This plot twist would also check all of Bethesda's boxes for creating a hero born of some cosmic fate or tragic irony, right? They always want to imbue the player character with some grander purpose or calling that thrusts the player into an otherwise unfamiliar world. This ends up surrounding the player in a deeper sense of mystery and a slowly unraveling narrative that's just as exciting and new to your character in the game as it is to you in real life. I mean, it's kind of brilliant the way they do this, honestly, but not at all unfamiliar when it comes to writing good stories. Some might consider it a bit tropey, but some of the greatest heroes of English literature are born of tragedy and circumstance. Introducing Barrett and making him out to be a major character could all just be clever misdirection on Bethesda's part in order to throw us off the trail of sniffing out plot details. Unfortunately, they may not have done quite well enough. So the next question you may be asking is, why did the Crimson Fleet show up to a dig site after you found an artifact and Barrett landed to investigate? Was it good timing for the fleet or just bad timing for you and Barrett? I think the Crimson Fleet somehow knew about this artifact, or at least that something special was found there. How, I'm not exactly sure. One theory of mine is that it's possible they have a spy in the United Colonies, or even Constellation. this isn't entirely far-fetched, considering Constellation shares a headquarters with the United Colonies in New Atlantis. The Crimson Fleet may understand this and be just as opposed to Constellation as they are to the United Colonies. Regardless, I think they wanted to show up to steal something vital from the United Colonies by interfering with a Constellation investigation that they somehow got word of. The Crimson Fleet seemed to be constantly trying to thwart any effort made by the UC just to spite them. But finding rare space treasure is surely a large motivating factor for space pirates. That is, if they're anything like good old seafaring Earth pirates from back in the day. So all of this may not be much of a revelation to some of you, but my speculation about the plot doesn't quite end here. Remember when I was talking about the player creation screen and starting out as a, quote, employee? Well, I think this woman here, based on the office she's in and some of the cheesy corporate platitudes like rely on each other that adorn her office, I think she's some kind of human resources employee. I think that this might actually be a scene where you start out your game in Starfield talking to an employee of a corporation like Ryujin before you begin your work in the mines, right? That leads to you finding the artifact. Now, we know Starfield has different beginnings depending on which start you choose, but this could be one of them. We already know that working for Ryujin is one of those beginnings, but Ryujin is based in Neon City, so I'm not sure if you would end up as a miner working for them, considering Neon City is surrounded by water. Nonetheless, I think your epic journey could begin here in the humblest of places, a boring work office getting hired for a mundane job until things go sideways. You know what? That really reminds me of another game that I love. Okay, so now that we've gotten that all out of the way, let's recap the whole shindig. According to my theory, you start in an HR office, picking your background, your traits, your physical attributes, and all that. You get hired by this company, and they send you to the mines on whatever planet you're at. You dig deep enough to find an important artifact of some sort, and Constellation is contacted to come take a look at it. Unfortunately, the Crimson Fleet was intercepting the signal and found the exact location of the rare and potentially pricey artifact that's been recovered. They hope to get there before the authorities show up, but they underestimate how badass you are with your AR-99 that no one noticed you brought to work. In all the chaos, Barrett takes a mortal wound, but has time to impart his mission to you and briefly explain what to do before he bites the big one. Since you've seen the visions and you've been commissioned by Barrett to return the artifact to Constellation, you do exactly that. You know, last dying wishes and all. So you take Barrett's Chronomark watch, his Starship Frontier, and his dorky robot companion.
I resent that.
And head for Jemison, the home planet of the United Colonies' capital, New Atlantis. Constellation listens to your visions, tells you the possible meanings, and also that finding the other artifacts is key to solving the mysteries of things they don't yet understand, but that they're on to something big. After all that's happened and knowing that your life has now taken on a much greater sense of purpose from the agency of important events, you decide to join Constellation in honor of their fallen brother, Barrett. They teach you the ways of Constellation and open up their facilities to you, as well as some basic starting equipment. They allow you to keep Barrett's ship and Vasco in order to continue searching for more artifacts. It's likely that the visions you saw when touching the artifacts showed you some small glimpse or hints as to the location of the other artifacts as well. So right off the bat, you have a good starting point at least for where to find them. This will probably bring you to Neon early to speak to this collector of sorts, where he describes an artifact in his possession coming from a man who sold it to him, a man who says it spoke to him, much in the way that the artifact you found spoke to you with the visions you saw. Your travels will see you make use of the Constellation star stations in order to map out your adventures, refuel, and gather supplies if need be, in order to continue your search for the final pieces to this puzzle, involving this strange stone structure and this space-time altering gyroscopy thing. What could it all mean? Honestly, I have no idea, but I can give you my best guess. I think the device with the intersecting rings that creates this gyroscoping anomaly might be a way to travel outside the Milky Way, using some sort of space-time manipulation in order to make first contact with intelligent humanoid aliens in another galaxy, or possibly multiple galaxies. This would, in essence, take humanity from an interstellar civilization to an intergalactic one. Either that, or it's a network of maps to all the known locations of intelligent civilizations in our galaxy, left behind by a lost civilization. If you want to dive deeper down this rabbit hole as we seek to uncover the greatest mystery of Starfield, then click the card in the upper right corner of the screen now to start Part 1, Origin. Alright, so that's my take on it all, top to bottom. Now before we get all excited, thinking we've blown the lid off this thing, there are some potential holes in this theory. The starship that the player is flying in the gameplay trailer doesn't appear to have the Frontier logo on the side of it, like the one in the teaser trailer. It's hard to get an exact comparison of Barrett's ship and the player's ship due to lack of dissectable shots in the trailer. Also, Barrett appears to be on the main promotional art and poster for Starfield, which could indicate a larger role in the game or possibly some other reason as to his absence or even resurgence. And of course, I could just completely be dead wrong, taking all these so-called clues completely out of context, or in the very least, so many of these details could have just been underdeveloped pieces of an early build of the game. There's really just no way of knowing, but with what we have on hand currently, I feel like this is the most likely course of events, or at least for the prologue to Starfield. So what did you guys think? What are your thoughts on the plot to Starfield and the course of events shown in the gameplay trailer? I know one thing, we won't have to wonder too much longer as the official release date of Starfield has been revealed, and September 6th will have us discover the story and all its mysteries for ourselves. Not only that, but the Starfield Direct is coming on June 11th, and I'm sure we'll all get a lot more information about the gameplay as well as the story to Starfield. Thanks a lot for watching. I appreciate all your views and support. To continue to support this channel in a meaningful way, please leave a like on the video, drop a comment down below, because you know I'll respond, and subscribe to the channel most importantly. With a channel subscription, you won't miss any important updates, community posts, or new videos the second they drop. We've got a lot of exciting things coming our way, and I'm looking forward to it all with you guys as we look forward to the future.